Good afternoon, everybody. Or good evening, I'm sorry. Hello, I'm Jim Hart. I'll be the facilitator for today's meeting. Welcome, and thank you for participating in this virtual public meeting of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement for the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program. The meeting will consist of a brief presentation simultaneous with Q&A and followed by oral testimony for those who registered. The presenter will be Serena Sweet, the BLM project manager. The slides are available on the BLM Alaska website for anyone who wants to follow along on their phones. Go to the BLM Alaska website, follow the links to the Coastal Plain SEIS planning page. Some logistics. This is a virtual meeting presentation. There are some things I need to go over before we start. There is a Q&A box for you and to ask questions throughout the presentation portion of the meeting. How you use the Q&A is simply click on it, ask your question. We can't answer any political questions. We may not have an answer immediately, so please be patient. You can also ask questions in writing, which is probably the best option for more complex questions. This meeting is being recorded. What does it mean? Well, the recording is going to be used to develop a transcript of everything spoken for our records. The virtual meeting may be put on Facebook, on the project website, or other platforms so people who miss the meetings can view the meetings at a different time at their convenience. This is also a benefit for folks who might have issues with bandwidth-related glitches during the live meeting. If you miss anything, you can go back to the recording to listen. Phone-in participants can ask questions after the presentation concludes. You'll be able to unmute yourself, but please wait until called on. For folks on the phone, you have to press *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. Those numbers again, *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. There will be a brief time after the presentation dedicated for phone-in callers only, so they can ask questions. At the conclusion of the phone-in questions, we will no longer take Q&A. This is so we can focus on testimony. At the conclusion of the phone-in questions, we'll take testimony from people, 3 minutes per person per meeting. We want to make sure that everyone can testify if they choose. Appropriate language. Anyone who uses inappropriate language will lose their opportunity to testify at this meeting. Disruptive behavior. Anyone who uses this platform to disrupt the meeting will also lose their opportunity to testify. Things like reading poetry or playing music are not testimony and are not appropriate for this forum. Priority goes to first-time testifiers, and each person only has one opportunity per meeting. And don't forget, if you weren't able to orally testify today, or if you weren't able to finish what you wanted to say, you can always upload it to the BLM NEPA register. Look for the link on the BLM Alaska website. With that, allow me to introduce Tom Heinlein, the Acting State Director for BLM Alaska. Tom?
All right, thank you, Jim, and good evening, everyone. As Jim said, my name is Tom Heinlein. I'm the Acting State Director for the Bureau of Land Management here in Alaska. So I'd just like to thank you all for joining us as we safely engage you through virtual public meetings. It's important to me that we get this information to you in the most efficient and quickest way possible and provide multiple platforms to receive feedback from you. By doing these meetings virtually, we're protecting the health of the communities we serve and allowing you the ability to get information safely. This process is more efficient. It won't get canceled because of weather. It allows us to schedule more meetings to accommodate your schedule. It costs the taxpayers less in travel costs, and it brings in a wider, more diverse audience. It's another tool that we intend to continue using in addition to in-person meetings when conditions warrant. So tonight, what we're going to do is discuss the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement for the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program. After conducting a review that was required by Executive Order 13990 and brought to conclusion with Secretary's Order 3401, the Department of Interior identified defects in the underlying record of decision supporting the leases, including the lack of analysis of a reasonable range of alternatives in the environmental impacts statement conducted under the National Environmental Policy Act. The Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are co-leading a comprehensive analysis of potential environmental impacts to address deficiencies identified in Secretary's Order 3401 and to analyze potential additional alternatives. So with that, I'd now like to turn the presentation over to my counterpart, Karen Cogswell, who is the Acting Regional Director for the Fish and Wildlife Service here in Alaska.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening, everyone. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service appreciates the opportunity to work with the Bureau of Land Management in preparing the supplemental EIS for the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Under the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act, or NILCA, the service is tasked with managing the Arctic Refuge in a manner which conserves animals and plants and their natural diversity, ensures the opportunity for continued local subsistence use, protects water quality and quantity, and fulfills international wildlife treaty obligations. The Tax Act added a fifth purpose for the Arctic Refuge, providing for an oil and gas program. In addition to our responsibilities as a land manager, we have responsibilities under the Endangered Species Act, Marine Mammal Protection Act, Wilderness Act, Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. Thank you to those who have taken time to join this hearing today. We look forward to hearing your comments that will help guide development of the SEIS.
All right, thank you very much, Karen. And now it's time to introduce Serena Sweet, today's presenter. Serena?
Thank you, Jim. I'm Serena Sweet. I am the BLM Alaska project manager for this project. I would like to also recognize a group of specialists that are listening in and that will be assisting with these public meetings and with the process. These individuals include Tom Heinlein, the BLM Alaska State Director, Acting State Director, Kevin Pendergast, the BLM Alaska Deputy State Director for Resources, Shelley Jones, the BLM Alaska Arctic District Office Manager, Bob King, the BLM Alaska Archaeologist, Craig Perham, he's the BLM Alaska Wildlife Biologist, Rob Brumbaugh, the BLM Alaska Oil and Gas Section Chief, Chris McKee, the BLM Alaska Subsistence Coordinator, Beth Miko, the BLM Alaska Arctic Anthropologist, Leslie Ellis Waters, the BLM Alaska Communications Director. With the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we have Karen Cogswell, the Fish and Wildlife Service Acting Regional Director, Wendy Loya, the Fish and Wildlife Service Regional Director for Science, International, and Migratory Birds, Charlie Hamilton, the Fish and Wildlife Service Marine Mammal Specialist, Steve Berenson, the Fish and Wildlife Service Arctic Refuge Manager, Josh Rose, the Fish and Wildlife Service Oil and Gas Coordinator for the Arctic Refuge, and finally, Paul Leonard, the Fish and Wildlife Service Arctic Refuge Ecologist. Next, we're going to view a presentation about the project that was pre-recorded for consistency.
And now we will begin the presentation. Agenda. Today we're going to cover an overview of the project area, background information, decisions to be made, agency responsibilities, the tentative schedule, and how to participate in the process. I will also be indicating that we are moving to the next slide and reading from all of the slides for everyone that is following along on a hard copy of the presentation. Now on to slide 3. Project area map. Project area. The area comprising the coastal plain includes approximately 1.6 million acres within the approximately 19.3 million acre Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is the predominant land manager in the program area. Other lands in the coastal plain include Alaska Native lands conveyed pursuant to the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, also known as ANCSA, and native allotments. The program area excludes a northern coastal portion of Air Force administered lands near Kaktovik. Lands outside the BLM's Oil and Gas Leasing Authority are those excluded from the definition of the coastal plain in Public Law 115-97, Native Conveyed Lands, and other Native Selective Lands. Now slide 4. Background. In September of 2019, and in connection with Public Law 115-97, the BLM completed the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Final EIS. The BLM then issued a Record of Decision, or ROD, on August 8th of 2020. The Record of Decision approved a program to implement the Tax Act, which directed the BLM to manage the oil and gas leasing program on the coastal plain in a manner similar to lease sales under the Naval Petroleum Reserves Protection Act of 1976. On June 1st of 2021, the Secretary of the Interior issued Secretary's Order 3401, which directed a temporary halt on all department activities related to the leasing program in the Arctic Refuge pending a new comprehensive analysis of potential environmental impacts of the program to address identified legal deficiencies. On August 4th, 2021, a notice of intent was published in the Federal Register, kicking off the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement process. Now, slide 5, decisions to be made. The purpose of this public scoping process is to determine the scope of issues to be addressed and to identify the significant issues, including any legal deficiencies in the final EIS related to an oil and gas leasing program within the coastal plain. Supplemental analysis may include, but is not limited to, revision of reasonably foreseeable development scenarios and areas available for leasing, an alternative allowing for less than 2,000 acres of surface development, updated analysis of greenhouse gas emissions, new information related to subsistence resources such as fish, marine mammals, caribou, and other subsistence use and access issues, a wider range of potential development outcomes, and/or revision of lease stipulations and required operating procedures. Information received during this process will influence the development of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement and guide the scope of the environmental analysis. The BLM will work collaboratively with interested parties to identify the management decisions best suited to local, regional, and national needs and concerns. Slide 6. Agency responsibilities. The Bureau of Land Management is the lead federal agency for the development of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement. The BLM is also responsible for management of the leasing program and conducting lease sales and adjudicating relevant permits. The Fish and Wildlife Service is a partner with BLM in preparation of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement and administers surface responsibilities of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Other cooperating agencies are still being determined. Letters have been sent to interested tribes, Alaska Native corporations, and other potential cooperating agencies. Slide 7, tentative schedule. This table includes the tentative schedule for the major milestones of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement process. Please note these dates are subject to change. As you can see from the colorful graphic, we are in the beginning phases of the overall process. The scoping period we are in now, which is the second orange box on the top graphic, closes on October 4th, 2021. We anticipate that we will have a draft Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement in June 2022 and a final Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement in summer of 2023. We project that it will take approximately 24 months to complete the analysis process from publication of the Notice of Intent to the Record of Decision in August of 2023. Slide 8, how to participate. Testimony tonight will be recorded to incorporate into the analysis process. You can also provide comments through the NEPA register at www.blm.gov/Alaska to find the link to the project webpage, and also by clicking on the Participate Now button. Emails are accepted at BLM_AK_coastalplain_supplemental EIS at blm.gov, or comments can be mailed to BLM, Alaska State Office, attention Coastal Plain Supplemental EIS, 222 West 7th Avenue, number 13, Anchorage, Alaska, 99513. As a reminder, scoping comments will be accepted through October 4th. And slide 9. Thank you for being here today, and we look forward to hearing from you.
All right, thank you, Serena. So now it's time for questions from our phone-in participants. We'll begin accepting questions. This is not a time for testimony. Okay, that's coming up next. These are listeners not in the Zoom application who have not had the opportunity to ask questions using the Q&A feature. For callers, you will be able to unmute yourself, but please press *9 to raise your hand. And then to unmute yourself, hit *6. And we'll be calling out the last 4 of your phone number once we see your hand raised. And then we'll let you know when it's time, we'll let you know when you have about a minute left during your comment. But again, this is not for testimony. This is for questions. Does anybody on the phone have a question regarding the presentation?
Jim, this is Serena. We do not have anyone with their hand raised on the phone at this moment.
Okay, thanks. All right, so with that, let's begin the testimony. We'll be calling on participants based on a randomized list from the folks who had registered. Even though I'll call out your name, we ask that you please spell your first and last names for the transcriptionist, and we will have a timer. When it turns red, it's time to start wrapping up your comment. You have about a minute left at that point. And first on the list.
First on the list, Jim, we have Lynn Larson. If you could raise your hand, Lynn, we'll get you unmuted. All right, Lynn, you should be unmuted.
Okay, can I go?
Yes, hello.
Am I okay?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, Lynn Larson, it's Lynnlarsen. And I, in 1988, first went to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Since then, I ventured to Alaska's Brooks Range every year and have spent about 180 days in the Arctic Refuge, including 50 in the 1002 area. My first trip to the 1002 area was in 1989 when I rafted the Hula Hula. To get picked up by our plane, we had to cross the coastal plain to the Beaufort Sea. And thinking the 1002 area was a flat, barren, ugly region, I did not expect to like that part of the trip. To my surprise, I found the 1002 area magnificent, absolutely stunning. Even though I raft and hike in the refuge, my main purpose for going is to experience the place, get a feeling for the land. I'm an artist, and the landscapes of Arctic Alaska from my many trips are the subject of my oil paintings. And I would like to think that I will still be going to the 1002 area to paint, but with oil development in that area, my trip to the Chillick in 2017 might be my last. Allowing leasing in the 1002 without Congress having to vote just on this issue is unacceptable. Oil drilling proponents should not be able to attach the 1002 to a budget bill that only needs 50 votes when legislation to protect the 1002 requires 60. Furthermore, the whole process of the leasing program was rushed. What should have taken several years was allowed 1 year, resulting in inadequate studies on the quantity of available water and the impact on migratory birds. Even the seismic studies were not completed before the lease sales. The 1002 area, an incredible area of the United States, deserves protection from development. However, if development has to occur, the area deserves rigorous studies to understand the impact so as to inform our decisions. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening to us today.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Sarah Maupin. Sarah, can you raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Okay, we'll come back to Sarah. James Apone, do you have, or are you here? Can you raise your hand? Okay, we'll come back to James. Carolina Pavic, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can.
hello.
Great. I apologize for my voice. I have a bit of a cold, but I thank you for being here. I would like to start off by saying that on slide 3, you displayed a pretty nice map with the coastal plain divided up by land managers. And this is a map that I'm very familiar with, but the thing that I always find kind of ridiculous about the maps like that is that it's kind of ridiculous to pretend that development and subsequent destruction of one area and one wetland won't have permanent consequences for all of the other land surrounding it. And my question is, who then is liable for those consequences? And that is a battle that the state has had to have many, many times over. Unfortunately, the losers here are the people that inhabit the state. So I don't think that it's possible that you can reasonably guarantee protection to other land managers from your adjudicated actions on those lands that you lay your claims to, that you develop. And that, is one among many reasons why I don't support this project and this development. The other being that I think it's also absurd to pretend at this point that climate change is not altering the ways in which not only the indigenous people are living on their traditional lands, but also all of the guests, myself, and all of you are as well. And we just can't ignore the reality that climate change is impacting our world in negative ways. We've had massive bird die-offs along the peninsulas of our coastlines in Alaska, and what has happened this year and past years in the Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers is inexcusable. We've had abysmal fish returns with devastating and immediate consequences for riverine communities in the Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers. And I just don't think that we should waste any more government resources revisiting or conducting any more ESIs. We know what the science says and has said all along, and has said every single time that an ESA is conducted. You can run computer models until you blue in the face, but you can't pretend that we're not living the consequences of our actions in real time. And we know without a doubt that greenhouse gases are responsible for climate change. Temperatures will rise and permafrost will melt, and that will release toxicants like mercury, magnesium, calcium, and sodium into our rivers. And they will alter our ecosystems in devastating ways. And I don't think that oil and gas are renewable resources. We as a state and you as an agency need to stop investing with them. And also, beyond that, I think it's kind of shameful that this agency would attempt to satisfy a Trump-era decree in the wake of what the residents in these communities are now faced with, as a direct result of our dependence on these non-renewable resources. I think that your priorities should line the protections of these sacred lands and not lining the pockets of big oil, which don't do anything for our community. And lastly, I'd like to say that the coastal plain area is home to over 200 species of wildlife and holds the largest collection of wetlands in North America. And in 10 years' time, which is the length of one of these leases, you will accomplish only 2 things. You will make a select few individuals richer, and you will destroy the entire ecosystem. And I can't support that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next up, we have Mary Parham. Mary, are you available? You online? Okay, we'll come back to Mary. Next up, we have Carolyn Kramers. Carolyn, are you there? Okay. And just a reminder, if any of you are on the phone, hit *9 to raise your hand if we call your name and you're on the phone. All right, next we have Nauri Toller. Nauri. Oh, thank you, Nauri.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Hey, my name is Nauri Toller. That's Nauri Toler. I am Inupiaq from Nuiqsut and Nutkalvik. I currently live in Eagle River on the unceded lands of the Dena'ina. Thank you for hosting these meetings. I'm really glad to have an opportunity to look further into the impacts of development of oil and gas on the coastal plains. First, I want to highlight the difference between Indigenous voices for and against this project. While it's not 100% true, my experience is that those who speak for the development stand to gain financially. And I'm not saying anything bad about that. There's nothing wrong with it. We all work to better our lives. But in contrast, the Indigenous who speak against development have a lot to lose. And it's not measured in dollar amounts, but in subsistence, in culture, tradition, mental health, etc. We speak about protecting our land for our children and future generations. And those are the people we want to protect. Extractive development may provide a short-term financial gain, but with many immeasurable negative consequences. Our people have had so much taken from us within the last few generations. I feel it is owed to us to evaluate these kinds of projects with our health and wellness being the main priority. Consider things like violence against Indigenous women and children increase with extractive development projects nearby. Consider the impacts onto our mental health, our sense of identity, and how that may worsen with already significant problems with suicides within our communities, especially with our youth. Consider the cumulative impacts on our health and our subsistence. Our communities rely on subsistence, not just for food, but to bring us together, to practice our traditions, to take pride in our way of life. This is especially important in this sensitive area where caribou calving happens. Development not only creates a reliance on financial income that will only last decades, it threatens subsistence practices that we have relied on since time immemorial. It threatens our land, it contributes to climate change that is already damaging to the Inupiat people and impacts our part of the world more so than others. I'm asking that our people, our health, our culture, our traditions be made a priority after historically being an afterthought or considered a barrier. We deserve justice and acknowledgement at some point. I am asking the BLM to lead in this and to be an example of a powerful entity that is our ally to the Indigenous people of Alaska, and to take our well-being as not just a consideration, but a priority in this evaluation. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comment. And next we have Margie Dashifsky. Is she here? And again, if anybody is on the phone who's registered to speak, it's *9 to raise your hand.
Yeah, Jim, I'm not seeing Margie on the sign-in list, so move on to the next one.
Okay. And just to go back really quickly, Sarah Malpin. Okay. James Apone.
Yeah,
Mary
I'm not
Carr?
seeing them. I'm not seeing them logged in either, Jim.
Okay, I was just checking in case they're on the phone. All right, so now we'll open the floor. Is there anybody online who would like to testify? Raise your hand, please.
And just a reminder for those of you on the phone, press *9 if you want to raise your hand and provide testimony tonight. If you want to provide testimony, go ahead and raise your hand. It should be on the lower part of your screen. And for those calling in on the phone, if you would like to provide written testimony, you could do that electronically through our website at www.blm.gov/Alaska. And then you can navigate to the Coastal Plain project page. We'll stay on the line for a while longer just to make sure everybody gets the opportunity to provide testimony.
For those of you guys or those of you who are watching on Facebook, you're seeing the live stream of the supplemental environmental impact statement for the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program scoping meeting. Virtual public meeting, I'm sorry. And if you wish to provide testimony, written testimony, go to the blm.gov/Alaska website, follow the links, and you can provide testimony there as well. Just a reminder for folks who want to provide testimony, raise your hands. And we'll call on you. If you're on the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand to provide testimony. For those of you who might be watching on Facebook, I want to welcome you and thank you for watching this virtual meeting on the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement for the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program. We're awaiting further testimony from participants. If you would like to provide written testimony, don't forget you can go to the blm.gov/Alaska website and navigate to the Coastal Plain SEIS project page to provide written testimony as well. For folks who are on the phone who aren't able to see the Q&A box, we did have a question for Carolina Pavick, and she said, are we allowed to submit written comments if we have provided testimony tonight? And the answer is yes, you can do both. Once again, anybody who wants to provide testimony, once you sign in to the Zoom meeting, raise your hand. We'll call on you for testimony. You have 3 minutes to provide it, but you can also give written testimony at blm.gov/Alaska. Navigate to the Coastal Plain SEIS project page, and there you can provide written testimony. You'll also find all sorts of information regarding the project. We will be staying till about 7 p.m. to see if anybody comes on a little bit late. And again, if you're on the phone, it's *9. *9 to raise your hand. For folks who would like to provide testimony, don't forget to raise your hand. You do that if you're on phone line by hitting *9, and then we'll call on you for testimony. You can also provide your written testimony, of course, at blm.gov/Alaska and navigate to the Coastal Plain SEIS project page. We'll be staying till about 7 o'clock in case anybody comes in a little bit late, like to provide testimony. Just want to once again say welcome and thank you for folks who are online for the presentation today, for the virtual public meeting on the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement for the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program. For those of you guys who are watching on Facebook, you can participate by either following the Zoom link that's available on the web, or you can go to blm.gov/Alaska and navigate to the Coastal Plain SEIS project page and provide written testimony there. We'll be on until about 7 o'clock in case anybody wants to provide testimony. And if you're on the phone and you want to provide testimony, it is again *9 to raise your hand. *9. If you'd like to provide testimony for the Coastal Plain SEIS project, now's the time. *9 to raise your hands, or if you're in Zoom, raise your hand to be called on. If you prefer, you can also do it in writing. Go to blm.gov/Alaska, navigate to the Coastal Plain SEIS project page, and you provide written testimony. We'll be here probably for another 10 minutes. Plenty of time. Call in and provide your testimony.
Jim, this is Serena. We have an individual with their hand raised. I'm going to turn them on to speak.
Okay, Princess?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
How long do I have to speak?
You'll have 3 minutes. Can you hold on just a second and see if we can get our timer up?
Yeah, I've got to open up the file again. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. I can do a timer on this end, and Princess, I'll remind you. I'll come in and let you know when you got 30 seconds. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
I've got it. I've got it.
You got it? Okay.
And if you could please spell your first and last name when you kick off your testimony, that would be great. Thank you.
You should be good. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, did you say I'm good to go?
Yeah, go
If you
ahead.
could just start with the spelling of your name.
My name is Princess. My legal last name is Lukai, which is spelled L-U-C-A-J. That's correct.
Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to thank you for hearing my testimony this evening. Shoji Tajayoji Netzaigwich and Ithi, Shiahanai Catherine, Stephen Peter Oji Gavakwa. My name is Princess Dajrai Johnson, and my grandparents are the late Catherine and Stephen Peter from Vashranko from Arctic Village, Alaska. And I'm just calling in to, first of all, just commend the Biden administration's suspension of the Arctic refuge leases, and also to just speak out in opposition to the ADA's 1.5 million that they put towards Arctic refuge oil exploration, despite so much public opposition. And we've just had such a very, very long history now of public opposition, both here in Alaska and across the nation, and now across the world, as we are facing this climate crisis, this pandemic, all of these issues that we're under right now. My family, every year we go to fish camp on the Yukon River. And this year we were not able to go to fish camp, along with hundreds and thousands of people that have been impacted by the lack of the salmon, the thukcho on the Yukon River, which means that our other food sources become increasingly critical, not only to our survival and our livelihoods, but of course that is our spiritual connection. And I'm thinking primarily of the caribou of the Vatsai and this relationship, this spiritual relationship that we have with these animals. So it's encouraging to me to see what's happening now under the Biden administration. But I just also want to stress that when we look at the dire need that we have right now in our world to transition off of fossil fuels, and to think of a possible future for our future generations where they are still able to live off the land and subsist off the caribou and the salmon and all of these other foods, our berries and all of these animals and plants that, we've been able to be in relation. Our sustenance, our spiritual sustenance, our physical sustenance. So, here we are once again with a little bit more of an opportunity, I feel like, to really protect this place in a good way, and really work towards
a just transition off of fossil fuels more than anything. Anyone who turns on the news will see images of flooding and wildfires and the bird die-offs that we're seeing along the coast. And again, you know, this lack of the king salmon on the Yukon River should be alarming to any of us, and all the more reason for us to protect the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
Thank you for your comment.
Must
All right, is there anybody else who would like to comment or would like to provide testimony? If you'd like to provide testimony, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone and you'd like to provide testimony, it's *9. We still have a couple minutes left.
Jim, we have a hand raised.
Yes, 2407. Phone number 2407. Would you like to provide testimony? *6 to unmute yourself. You are unmuted on our end, sir. *6. Okay, you just muted yourself again. Go ahead and hit *6 one more time. There you go. And just make sure your phone, the phone you're on itself isn't muted. Maybe hit the mute button on your phone too.
Okay, that was the problem.
Yeah, there you go.
Happened as well. My name
Thank you.
is
Go ahead. Yeah, say and spell your first and last name. Thank you.
My name is Pamela Miller, P-A-M-E-L-A, middle initial A, M-I-L-L-E-R. I will speak tonight about the most glorious day we have in Alaska of fall, and I expect many people who thought they might join this call are taking advantage of our scarce resource of beauty in the fall time. I will speak just briefly about the need to include a rigorous analysis of 3D seismic in the EIS that addresses all phases of development. Seismic happens from prior ones at the very early stages through to past development, redevelopment, and so on. So I will just reflect on the fact that just one seismic survey for which there was comments with a date due of November 6th, 2020. Around then, I was very concerned about BLM's rushed and insufficient environmental review for a 3D seismic program in Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Thankfully, that program did not go forward. It would have involved about a third of the coastal plain. As you analyze impacts from seismic, it needs to address the cumulative impacts of seismic on the refuge lands, the nearshore waters, the private lands within the external boundaries of the Arctic Refuge, and to the west of the Arctic Refuge boundary. The 3D seismic, BLM found that I note that vehicles are heavier and there's more over time. The new program involves a much tighter grid, heavier vehicles than were done in the 1980s of the seismic that I monitored. Most importantly, there's been only very limited reviews of the seismic done in the NPRA, and yet just the basic statistics are that there were 4 times more 2D line miles surveyed than predicted by the plan, and 3D surveys covered 14 times as many square miles as predicted by the EIS's covering.
Yeah, 30 seconds, ma'am.
I want to say that this EIS should step back and do an entire new analysis of snow cover, vegetation impacts, ice and water withdrawals for snow roads, ice roads, and seismic, and the cumulative effects if there is a leasing program for the 40, 50, or 60 years, if there's oil found for which the oil development would occur. Thank you. And everyone can return to the beautiful evening in Alaska. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, we'll stick around for a couple more minutes, see if anybody else wants to testify. Once again, *9 to raise your hand if you're on the phone. And if you're on Zoom, just raise your hand. You hit the little button at the bottom. All right, just want to say thank you for everybody for participating, the folks who attended the meeting and also the panelists. Thank you all for your time. The next scheduled meeting is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Thank you and have a good night.